So look, thanks everybody for zooming in. We thought it was a good opportunity to sort of showcase and refresh what the GLAM Lab is all about and some of the resources and how it works. And then I'll hand over to Zach, where he can talk a little bit about what he's been doing on his internship with us and some of the new technology that we've purchased the end of last year and how it's been used. But yeah, before I start, I'll just acknowledge the Awabakal lands that I know I'm meeting on today. Some of you probably are as well, or other lands from where you're zooming in from, and pay respects to elders past, present, emerging, and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters, and also acknowledge and pay respects to our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander colleagues that might be joining us today. So I'll quickly just share just a short PowerPoint presentation. Now, I've also just shared the link to this presentation online because I've embedded a few links to what I'm talking about, and sometimes that's easier than trying to find them online. So this just sort of shows where the GLAM Lab, so GLAM standing for Galleries, Libraries, Archives and Museums. The GLAM Lab sits within Special Collections and Archives over at the Auchmuty Library. And it's a physical lab. Some GLAM labs are virtual spaces, but we've got like the physical space. We also have like physical collections. So we have quite large holdings of not only the university archives, but collections and archives from the region that are of significance. So we've got a lot of rich cultural material that our researchers and students can use in working on projects in the GLAM Lab. Then we have our physical reading room, and that's where our researchers can spend time looking at our rare books and archives and use the reading room to sort of do research. So we also have quite a virtual presence. We have the Living Histories digital repository. So that's where a lot of our digitised assets are uploaded to that repository, and it can be used in different ways. A lot of the resources are connected, so there'll be various formats like 3D scans, photographs. We have links to our audiovisual collection, but it's sort of like a one-stop shop that people can go to the digital platform, do a search and find what they're looking for. And we have our Hunter Living Histories website. So it's a blog site where we encourage our users, researchers and students and staff in special collections to write, just short posts and share them online. So that's where, people are able to sort of demonstrate how they've been using our resources. Often they, want to share what they've been learning. Sometimes it's a call out to other communities. So if we have inquiries come in, there might be an inquiry that we know that there's going to be broader audience and communities that will sort of know about this topic. So it's a good way of promoting what our communities are doing. And connected to the Hunter Living Histories website, our monthly showcase. So they're on the first Monday of every month. And again, that's sort of a physical and virtual space where people can talk about, they can present research, again, do a call out to the community. And it's also a really, really good opportunity for our Working to Greater Learning students and interns to come along and, again, talk about, what they've been working on. It's sort of a good confidence building exercise for them to, one, network with the community, just get some experience just talking in front of different audiences, and then publishing. So they get that experience in writing and sharing what they're doing. Now, the GLAM Lab concept came about around the early 2000s. I think the first one was in the New York Library. This publication from 2018 was where some of the GLAM Labbers got together and published a chapter each. They're all very diverse. The one we have here at the University of Newcastle is the first in a university in Australia. So there's a whole network globally of GLAM labs. I've hyperlinked a few different resources if anyone's interested in knowing more about them. Like I said, some of them are virtual and only work in big data. Others might be a mix of virtual and physical space. But yes, some of the sort of ideas that came out of that book. I'll just read out sort of some of the, I think, key quotes to sort of describe what the GLAM Lab is. Success relates to skills and competencies as well as to decision-making, empowerment, trust, tolerance, investment by thinking outside the box. So it's like a place to experiment for people from different disciplines to come together. Just try out different things if they have ideas. It also sort of offers a space for constructive testing, safe experimenting, learning from unavoidable but welcome beneficial failures. So we find again, something might work doing it one way, and then, having sort of people use the lab from different disciplines, that's where we sort of get that cross-sharing of knowledge and technology, old technology, new technology. So it's like this really nice mix. And because of the formats we're working in, we've got the obsolete format. So we need that knowledge and people with the skill from how to sort of work with those old formats to the newer technology. So it's sort of this nice mix of new and old. And just the ability to sort of spot emerging issues and tackle and address them. Think about like what the short and long-term issues are going to be, like when we're working with a lot of cultural material. And this diagram comes from that publication. And it sort of shows that the collaborators and the partners are just as important as the actual users of the space. And the collections of data, the technology and the equipment's important, but it's again getting back to like the users and the people that sort of come in and collaborate, and then those outside supporters and partners that come in. Now, a lot of what we do, and the lab was actually set up in 2018 to host work integrated learning students. So that was the sole purpose. It was set up with 10 working spaces, collaboration between Wallatuka, HASS and the library. So since 2018, we have hosted, I think it's over 40 placements. It could even be a little bit more, but what was the 80-hour work integrated learning placements have increased this year to between 120 and 140. So this year we've had 4 work integrated learning students. We have another one starting next week. And I've just put in that link, there's some examples of some of the work that they have done with us. It's a mutually beneficial partnership. So, the process is for the student, they come in, they have like an interview, send a CV. We work with them on what they'd like to learn and make sure that it sort of fits with the learning objectives of the course that they're doing. And then we'll sort of tailor a project. Sometimes it's them working on a larger project, or could be them doing a small project that they can, have sort of a workable start and end to completion. So, it's got to be meaningful, but again, because they're able to publish and share their work, we've actually, got quite a few students that have been able to share their projects on the Hunter Living History site. I've added this little mini-WIL here because probably more so before COVID, we worked quite strongly with communications students, and Philip Lloyd, who's our adjunct here in the lab, who spends about 2 or 3 days a week him and myself have worked with some of the lecturers in creative industries and communications to co-create like these mini-WIL placements where the students might come in for 2 to 4 hours over the placement and work with some of our regional television archive. So that the Regional World 50 Years Ago project was quite an interesting one, that there was some footage of news that went to air back in 1971. It was silent, but we had the scripts. So we had an outsider person, former news presenter Ray Deneen, come in and do the voiceover of the scripts, and then the students had to then recreate and put together the audio file with the vision, because the script also had where there needed to be like the person's name sort of physically shown in text. It was a really good exercise of them understanding how news was created historically, but then using new digital media to reconstruct it. And then they had to put music over it. So back in the 70s, apparently they added music. And then NBN News came in and did a story on the student. So it sort of had this full circle effect, and it was a really good experience, I think, for the students to be able to sort of engage with some of the industry professionals. Now, the major project, so this is, again, mainly being creative industry students and communications students where they've been given quite a large project over a whole year. And they've come in, again, talked to us about what we have, what they're interested in doing. And one student used some of the university archive magazines for the 1970s and 80s to then create these beautiful archival chats where she wrote poems, but then used some of the context of universities' photographs and archives. We had another student who was really interested in creating audio for historic footage, and we had this newly sort of digitised footage of the end of World War II in 1945 in Newcastle. It was in beautiful colour, didn't have audio, so the students sort of spent quite a bit of time researching all the technology of the trucks, the transport, everything in this. I think he did about 4 or 5 minutes, but reconstructed like a soundscape, and then was able to sort of talk through, the different levels, the sound that was in the foreground, the midground, the background. But yeah, so there's sort of something quite unique with, I think, working with original material. So to see our students really engage well when they find something that's sort of meaningful to them. And then our online resources, like I mentioned before, they're, just a really good opportunity for students, but those links are all in there for anyone that's interested in having a look. This is just a photo of a team of volunteers that used to work in the television industry, and led by the gentleman at the back, Philip Lloyd, who I mentioned earlier. He started this project way back, I think 2011 or 2012, to digitise the local television archive, and has set sort of a portion of the GLAMx Lab up now to be able to digitise any format, audiovisual format. And they were successful in digitising the entire NBN television archive that is on magnetic tape. The earlier archive started in '62, so there's a lot of projects that now are connected to the preserving of the film, but it was a magnetic tape that was at risk, so they have targeted that and completed it a couple of years ago. This Linus Wizard project sort of came out of the blue, I guess. We knew that the urgency was to digitise a lot of this at-risk format. So while that was being done, we were also contacted by someone in IT that was talking about this Linus Wizard product for unlocking audiovisual material. So during COVID, they were looking at how it could be used in unlocking a lot of online material that was being created during COVID, like lectures and things like that. There wasn't apparently a big use case, but when they knew that we had this content that was digitized, it was pretty well organized. We also had some other metadata from the cue sheets that were written by people who created the day's footage. So there was really quite an interesting little archive that they were then able to do a pilot that has now evolved into, over 3,000 news files available on this search tool, available to students and to staff. And I have sort of mentioned it to a few people here at the uni, but it hasn't been widely promoted. But again, I think it will be a really good tool for our students and staff that are researching local history from all different sort of disciplines, from sociology, criminology, environmental science. There's just so much, and it's quite an effective tool. The way it searches is that when you open it up, you type in whatever you want to search. Each file has been broken into, so each 1 hour episode that's in an MP4 has been broken up into 5,000. It's had like a transcript run through it, and also an AI in the background. So if there's any text that's written anywhere in the background, it will pick up that text, and it actually stitches together what's been found in like a sausage. And then it tells you the number of the news item that then you can locate on YouTube. So it's quite what used to be quite a lengthy process to sort through a lot of this footage physically, manually, could take weeks and weeks, and now it can literally be done in seconds. And it is quite impressive. Now, I've just put a few references that I've written with colleagues at the university, and sort of just showcase some of the projects we've worked on and how we've tried to integrate the work in integrated learning in the lab. But the new technology that Zach's going to talk about, it's sort of, the lab is open to all students and academics. So, even though the focus is work integrated learning, there's also great possibility and scope for our research higher degree students, other staff, other researchers at the university to use our technology, even if it's in a small component of what they're researching. Now, before I do that, I might just open and just share the virtual tour. So for those of you that haven't actually been to the lab, I can just give you a quick tour. So we scanned the lab yesterday to scan. Can you see the Matterport?
Yeah, we can see it.
Page? Oh, that's good. Okay. So this is what we hope to put online to be able to sort of share with people. It's sometimes hard to describe exactly what's in the lab. And because we're out at the Auchmuty Library, there may be students that spend a lot of time in that new space. And just the opportunity for them to know that where we are and the type of resources and that we hold, being able to sort of refer people between different maker spaces, labs, to be able to sort of share resources. We thought that's a good way of doing it, was to scan and put up online. So here we've got our 3D scanner that Zach will talk about a little bit more in a moment. We've got our rare book scanner, so that's for our fragile rare books so that they can be scanned in a safe way. Now, this is a new piece of machinery called the Treventus. Our colleague Katie Sentis, who's in this meeting with us, Katie's been leading a thesis digitisation project. So that machine is quite unique in that it's automated. Once it's set up, it has a vacuum system and turns pages and can scan a book. Pretty rapid speed. And this is the audiovisual digitisation lab that Philip and his team work from. That deck is sort of set up to digitise all the different formats. So, you think VHS is probably the most common one, but we have in our holdings a lot of the other magnetic tape formats. So that's all there, able to be digitised and create the digital files. And this is a pretty sort of homemade apparatus using old projectors with new video on the side to capture the film. So that's what they're using for the 8mm captures. And then a lot of that sort of work that needs to be done before the digitisation is sort of done, in this space here. And again, there's probably only 2 or 3 of the volunteers that have sort of worked in film, so they know they've got quite specialised knowledge in knowing the processes and sort of keep pretty good documentation. So Zach, I might hand over to you and just let you share some of the technology you've been working on.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Anne. One sec, I'll share my screen. Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Zach, if you don't know who I am. I'm a creative industry student in my final year of a communications bachelor. I'm also working in the Auchmuty Library makerspace, and for the past 3 months, I've been working with the special collections team in a student internship role that's been focused on showcasing the virtual technologies we have in the lab to students and researchers, and also to explore more use cases for these resources around the university. So the 3 main pieces of equipment we hold in the lab are a handheld 3D scanner called an Artex Spider. We use this scanner to digitize various cultural items and rare artifacts that we hold in our collections, but it is also there to be used by students and researchers for any projects they might be working on. We also have an Oculus Quest 2 virtual reality headset. The lab has previously had VR experiences developed for experiences such as the Deep Time Project and the Victoria Theatre Project. So these headsets are primarily used to showcase these experiences. As a part of my internship, I wanted to test the handling of our 3D digitized items in virtual reality. So I created a very basic VR environment to test this in, which I'll show you a bit more in a moment. And the last piece of technology is the Matterport scanner, which is a specialized camera that captures 360 images, and it compiles them as a 3D walkthrough that you just saw that we use for the GLAMx. So for the 3D digitization process, we use an Artex Spider, which is this on the right here. In that photo, you'll see what it looks like. And it also is connected to proprietary software that Artec create called Artec Studio. So you've probably heard of of LiDAR or photogrammetry as a scanning method for capturing 3D models. But the Artec scanner uses a different method called structured light capture. And this method works by projecting a pattern of light onto the object, which is that green square in the left-hand corner of the screen. And it projects that pattern onto it and analyzes the light and how it actually deforms when it hits the object's surface. And that's how it actually creates the geometry. So it's really effective for quickly creating geometry for something like a stone tool or rocks. But it isn't as effective for capturing the actual texture of the object. So during my time here, I've tried to integrate photogrammetry into the existing process And we've actually updated our software so that that is natively accepted in Artec Studio now. And as an example, this is a scan I did of one of our rare items downstairs, which is the stone book. It's literally just a book carved out of stone. On the left here, you'll see the output of just using the Artec Spider. So it does capture texture. However, you'll see that it's very blurry. And if you were to zoom in even further, it would be really quite hard to make any detail out. And the actual color of the object is not very accurate. On the right here, you'll see I've actually implemented photogrammetry into the same software, and it has a much higher level of resolution, which translates to when you're in VR holding it, it's much easier and clearer to actually look at. And the actual color of the object is much more accurate. Here are just a few quick screenshots of some of the other scans that I've done during my internship. So I got to actually use some of the specimen collection that's at Uni House. While we had it on loan here for the Margaret Senior exhibition, I used them as my test subjects for testing out how to implement photogrammetry. And I also got the chance to scan heaps of various cultural items. Some were from the Indigenous collections, some were from the non-Indigenous collections. And that has been such an awesome privilege, which has opened up pathways and career opportunities that I really never would have known were out there. So I really think this type of technology in particular would be really appealing to a lot of creative industry students, particularly those that are into 3D modeling or animation or design of any kind, because it's such a useful skill set to have nowadays. And the access to these resources are not easy to come by, especially something that's like a $30,000 scanner. And there's many use cases that range from, you know, archaeology to game development to film production and to the glam sector. So these skills are assets for many industries. And the lab is fortunate enough to have a really high spec laptop. So I was capable it's capable of running game development software like Unreal Engine. And so while I was here to utilize the VR headsets, I wanted to create a very basic VR environment using Unreal Engine that I could load the 3D digitized models into from our collections and actually handle them in a virtual reality space. So on the screen, you'll see a few screenshots of my project. I didn't spend as much time as I would have liked on it, but it's just a really basic room, that you can put your headset on and walk around in and actually handle these items. So you'll see some screenshots of the perspective through the actual headset. And finally, as you saw earlier in our walkthrough of the lab, the Matterport has a bunch of interesting use cases as well. During my time here, I've gotten the chance to use it to scan art exhibitions that we hold downstairs. I've gotten the chance to scan an art exhibition that was curated by senior lecturer Kath McPhillips, and it was hosted at the Lockup. I got the chance to scan the Q building, which was also an incredible challenge, trying to get through an entire building. So you can see that there's a bunch of interesting use cases with it. And the Matterport software actually allows you to curate these walkthroughs. So you can add YouTube videos, you can add file downloads, text boxes, high resolution images, and it really allows you to curate that walkthrough. And you can actually embed these scans directly into websites, so you can view them on any device, which is making it super accessible. In particular, used to our team, this is an incredible tool for archiving purposes. We can take these scans and upload them to our Living Histories platform so that they're viewable to the public, but we can also export these files for the scans and archive them for any future use cases that might arise. So I hope through showing the ways that I've been able to use these resources in the lab, it highlights how useful of an environment this place is for students like myself, particularly if you're a creative that's interested in the emerging technology space. It's often hard to find access to expensive gear like 3D scanners, like a high-spec laptop, like Matterport scanners. And not only does this lab have that, but the team is really accommodating and open to collaborate with people. So I think if these resources are showcased to creative industry students, it might spark some interesting work integrated learning projects or research projects relating to these technologies in the process. Yeah, that's basically all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Yeah, it's been great having Zach in the lab. and it's the first time we've had an intern with the skills, and specifically like needing skills around VR and the technical side of things. And now, can I just introduce you to other team, special collection team members that are joining? We have Dr. Amy Mogadon, who's our university conservator, and he works with students and interns, and Johnny DeGravio, who's the university archivist. And I've also already mentioned Katie, who works on a lot of those exhibitions that Zach showed that had been scanned. So look, there's great possibilities. I think with working with cultural material, you know, we often think of skills and professions around history and archives, but yeah, with new technology, it really does open up a lot of different opportunities for students. At the moment, we also have a student who's doing information technology work integrated learning. So he's looking at some of our audiovisual footage that's online and just helping us organise that in a platform where it can be located a little bit easier. So so we might open up for discussion. If we Does anyone have any questions around the technology that Zach has been talking about? Or used the technology before?
Hi everybody, hey Zach, how you doing?
Good.
I was curious because you obviously towards the end of what you were talking about were discussing, especially with say the Stone book, turning the sorry, it's not LiDAR, but what's the actual acronym?
Structured light capture.
Structured light capture, yeah. So turning the structured light capture on a singular object that you're focusing on rather than an environment capture.
Yeah.
Is that a very different process to set up?
Yeah, that particular scanner, it can't really capture an environment per se. You'd probably use like a photogrammetry for that purpose or a LiDAR. But it's great for handheld items or smaller items of that kind. And then I know that Artec themselves actually, they have their scanners kind of range for different types of items. So this one's for smaller to medium objects, but you can get bigger ones that scan like planes and things like that. So I haven't explored fully what the limitations of the technology are, but I do know that on a smaller scale, like when you're scanning little handheld items, it really depends on the reflection of the object, how complicated the geometry is, how easy it is for the scans to align in the process. So yeah, it's really like a case-by-case basis. I find digitizing in general on what you are digitizing, of like what method you have to use. Thanks.
And as Zach mentioned before, the handheld scanner was purchased back in 2018 for the Deep Time project. And because the software is so much more advanced, there's a project for a student to go and now rescan everything that we've scanned because the quality is so much better. So there's all these like little mini projects that are sort of evolving out of this new technology. Now, who's got the hand up? Is that?
Hi, it's Leanne here.
Leanne, sorry, Leanne.
That's okay. How are you?
Good.
I guess moving on from what you were just talking about, and that's a really interesting thing, talking about technology and how quickly it does progress, and that legacy of buying equipment and finding that you know, the process of buying it itself is enough, and then by the time you purchase it, it's almost outdated. And then, you know, having that supported with hardware, software, I mean, that would be huge for you guys. It certainly is for us. It's a bit of a challenge with different things. And so then we've talked about that whole idea of leasing as a potential option that might be better, so that you are constantly keeping up to date. I don't know where you sit with all of that, because it's a huge problem.
It is a huge problem, and I guess we were fortunate in that the scanner still works really well because it's the expensive bit of kit to replace. The software is still expensive, but you know, it's the equipment. The library has purchased most of the equipment outright, but yeah, I think the issue is that often students and researchers don't even know we have it, and so it sits there when potentially it could be used. So it's like, how do we somehow pool or share or have like a register of, okay, this is all the equipment that is across the university, not all the equipment, of course, but this type of innovative virtual equipment, so that, you know, people aren't doubling up, or we're able
it's
just
sort
to
of
share
aligning
resources.
with courses really, and those people who are doing things. I know, Zach, so it's sort of like, this is a different world to me, and I find it fascinating and amazing. And I know that, you know, with anything, things have to sort of be embedded in a course for people to interact with them. But it's also that, I guess, connection with the academics, knowing that, you know, and Dom and other people would know far more than I on this 3D scanning, all of this kind of stuff, and how it could work really well, embedding it into a course so that they have to, you know, and whether they can utilize your
and
area.
because the Matterport is, I only used it for the first time yesterday. It's very user friendly, but the use then to like curate content in whatever you're scanning could be such a beneficial project for students, like humanities students, like that research that needs to be done. And that curation side is just another level on top of the scanning. So that's why I'm thinking it does have this really broad, I think, application to a lot of different disciplines. Gianna, sorry, Linda.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I just wanted to jump in then and say, so like with we're the library makerspace, Auchmuty and Arimba, we have makerspaces, and as you know, we've worked together. But we're like, and we've talked to the other makerspaces around campus, and we're hoping to sort of join us all together so that we actually had a landing page where we could all talk to each other and, you know, promote our students from one place to another for whatever their needs might be. But what we do in the makerspace is we're run by students like Zach, he's in our makerspace, and we run workshops. So Zach is about to start a masterclass workshop that will run twice a week at the moment, that introduces students to 3D scanning through the GLAMx and also 3D printing. So it runs for about an hour and a half, Zach. And students can come in and just get that basic feel of what is 3D printing, what is 3D scanning. You can pick up a lot of information that way. They can print something. Like we have a scanner here at Arimba. It just cost a couple of $1,000, but it scans mud-wilk shells. We've scanned bananas, pears, anything it scans. And so that's a way of getting students who, you know, besides being embedded in coursework, to get a bit of an understanding, because, you know, once you're hungry for that information, you can then go to move on to the other makerspaces and start exploring and experimenting and implementing that into the coursework also yourself.
Yeah, it is. It's like a stepping stone, isn't it? Just introducing and getting people comfortable with using technology.
And I think a big thing is putting into perspective like ways that it can be used too. Like, you know, I wouldn't have even imagined that I would go down a 3D digitization route if I didn't have access to the lab, you know, like knowing that that scanner was there and having that medium of being asked to scan some items. You know, it ended up in me realizing, wow, I could use this to scan like anything, and then therefore bring it into a game developing software and create something else with it. So I think it, as much as just getting them in the door, will open up like a world of opportunities in their own head as to like how they can use the technology. And then as a result, you get all these crazy work integrated learning projects that will contribute. So yeah, I think it's just getting the exposure out there first.
Yeah, Thanks, Zach. Now, Gianni, I notice you've got your hand up.
Yeah, look, the scanning is one thing. I guess the thing is, the university's been through so many upheavals that I've lost count of who's where, who's doing what, which building they're in, who's left. But the idea of this is that the scanning was one thing, but the performance area where this stuff happens is another. So, for instance, the thing that you talk about, the Aboriginal artifacts, that was a community-driven thing from a dig in Newcastle West that they built a KFC over the top of. So we needed a solution to bring people into contact with those things without harming them. At the same time, there was a sort of discussion going on with the Aboriginal communities around what they were going to do with it, whether they wanted them sitting in a box or whether they wanted to rebury them. So the 3D scanning wasn't sort of so much about just the fact that we could scan them, but it was also about what we could do, to help that information get out into the wider community, to put people in contact with 6,500 years of human activity. All right. Now, the scanning of the artifacts was one thing, but the innovation team that partnered in with the formation of the GLAMx Lab also created a mock-up of a deep time dig. All right, so that we could actually position these artifacts where they were found in the dig. All right, so that was one experiment they did. The other one was with the Victoria Theatre, where we had, again, a push to a group in the community was looking at getting this Victoria Theatre up and running again, but it was a dump, complete dump. It had been neglected for, I don't know, since the 1990s. And again, that was another project using archival records to recreate that site again in 3 dimensions. That really, even though the developers were great, once they saw the 3-dimensional work, it changed them. It drove them to really restore the beauty because they got to see how beautiful that building once was. Now, that was all created from sort of reconstructions from archival records and using the imagination of these guys that were working with us. So, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I would love to bring in all these sorts of things like the makerspace, whatever you're doing in creative industries, the lecturing, the touring, whatever it is, to help stimulate some kind of university-wide collaboration that keeps this stuff working, because at the moment it's like the wheels have fallen off. People want to see the Victoria Theatre, they want to see Deep Time, but I have to tell them, or whenever they ask me, that they've got to see it in the GLAMx Lab. That's the only place they can see it, where they can stick their headsets on and do all this sort of stuff. And the great thing about having the students work with this stuff is that, well, the Arctic scanner that Zach's been experimenting on is the same Arctic scanner that the Smithsonian's using on the Herculaneum scrolls. So it's sort of like it puts our students in contact with the kit that people are using. So these are not necessarily toys, they're more the stuff that high-level archaeologists use who are experimenting with this material. And that's where we wanted to peg ourselves at. We wanted to peg ourselves at the research end of what happens with this stuff. So I don't know, I guess I'm missing the innovation team because they were in the library with us, and it was always great to collaborate with those broad thinkers. And I'm just hoping that maybe out of this something can happen across the various walls to get it moving.
Thanks, Gianni. Now, Neil, I notice you've got your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to I just actually ask a question of the capacity of the GLAMx to take more material. And yeah, we were just talking about 6,500 years of history. I'm more talking 25 years of history. I think a lot of people know that we moved out of the ICT building two years ago. And I thought it quite sad that a lot of former student work was actually being put into a skip. So I grabbed as much as I could. And some of this stuff's literally going back 25 years. It keeps bubbling up. Oh, actually, this morning I was cleaning out a cupboard and found some DVDs of graduations in 2009, and I know there's also a raft of it up at the conservatorium as well. And I'm very, very loath to let this stuff go into a bin. And I'm just wondering, I have actually digitized a little bit of it. I have the equipment here to do it, but I soon understood how time-consuming digitisation really is, and I never really quite got the chance to continue that work. And I was just wondering whether you guys would be interested in at least housing that for the moment, so it doesn't inadvertently just get chucked out.
Yeah. Look, Neil, I think because I think if you want to send an email, and certainly raise it with our manager, Paige
Yep.
Wright, Special Collections, because I fully agree. It's that sort of material that is related to the university, or if it's related to students sort of working in partnership with the uni, and it's, they're sort of what they've left.
Neil, I've just put up the link to the graduations that we've got.
Yep.
Detailing every single bit of home movie footage, video footage, conferring of degrees booklet, whatever we've got relating to graduations from the Newcastle University College up until now, even though we don't have control of where they're putting those graduations up now. It's on some site, but the stuff that we've got, check what you've got behind you, yep, which is very blurry to me at the moment. But check against that. If there is anything missing, yes, we're very keen. So this whole thing about audio visual, this is what we're jumping on to, because it's at risk. The format itself really needs the attention.
Because I remember, we were in conversation about there was some student made a short film about the well-dressed gentleman.
Yeah.
And I had a copy, but which I thought
we got that,
was different, but the copy I sent you was a lot better condition.
Quality, yeah.
Swapped it out. So
yeah.
And also I've noticed the little bits and pieces I've watched of the student material is often they'll go shoot short films out in Newcastle, and you can actually see the progression of Newcastle changing over the time, because it has changed a lot in the last 25 years. So as an archive piece, that to me is incredibly important. So.
Yeah.
But I'll say, we'll talk more of this.
Yeah, that sounds good, Neil.
Yeah. You guys, here's a box of crap.
Well, look, we've got the National Film and Sound Archive in a cupboard, all right? Yeah. In the GLAMx Lab, that's what that room is a mini National Film and Sound Archive. Yeah. The guys that are volunteering at the moment, Phil and that team, are not getting any younger. Yeah. And this is why these guys have got 60 years plus of industry knowledge, right, on how to transfer one thing from one world into another. Now, even though it might be redundant videotape, the same thing that's befalling them is going to befall us, because human beings never stop creating stuff. So that's a skill that these older guys need to impart on younger guys. So please, that room was only set up for 10 students, and at the moment 2 of those places have gone to, there's a gigantic big scanner in there. So there's about 8 at the moment, and 5 of those seats were supposed to be for Indigenous students as well. So we're packing a lot in that room. It's more like a pilot, but I think it's really good for the humanities. I mean, at the moment we're sort of getting close. We're getting to know the Institute for Regional Futures as well, because they're born out of the Hunter Valley Research Foundation. I think a lot of this work is aligned to the School of Humanities and Social Futures. So if we get it all onto the same page and looking at this sort of as a regional thing, and starting to join the dots between what this digital data and all this digital mapping and all this digital joy that we can pull out of this thing can really help in what's going on in the communities, I think we'll be onto something pretty powerful. So and the graduation videos are just one little bit of it, right? But it's still a key thing. But again, it doesn't always exist on film. It exists on all sorts of different formats. And they contacted me the other day saying they couldn't find something which is in there sort of on the current stuff. But I said to them, they'll have to contact the provider or whoever the contractor is that's recording this stuff, and make sure that they know where it is so we don't lose it.
We also keep legacy machinery, because we know that if there's no use having a tape if you cannot play it.
You can't play it, and that's what makes it all risky,
And I think we did grab a few things, and that's what the guys are always after, that legacy machinery. So look, I'm mindful that we haven't got too much longer to go. So the opportunities, I think, for students and WIL students, because we do have that close collaboration with different communities, industry professionals, donors. Just wondering, is there any of our academics got any comments or anything around opportunities that they might be able to sort of see, or have any questions around? Yep, Jesper?
Yeah, thanks, Anne, and thanks, Johnny. It's really interesting to hear what's happening in GLAMx at the moment and all the new things you've got going. I certainly see lots of opportunities for working together, and we've had a bit of a demand issue in the School of Humanities, Creative Industries and Social Sciences, but that's going to be sorted out with WIL for All, etc. So we're hoping we can send you quite a few placement students next year in particular. As we've talked about separately, and this is not just a convenient arrangement. It's clearly really relevant what you're doing and core business to the humanities. So it's exciting. But I can see a few other ways of collaborating potentially as well around all the things you do and the relation to the GLAM sector and how we can integrate that into our Bachelor of Arts in particular, so that it's not something that students sort of discover after graduating, but something that's really built into the core of what we do. I think that would be really good to discuss over the coming months or so.
Yeah.
Maybe for next year.
Most definitely. No, thank you for your support and ongoing support. Because I just think that the way the GLAM Lab has just sustained itself, and it's sort of set up nicely, I think, for work integrated learning. So it's sort of pleasing to see that is a possibility that it's able to sort of continue next year. So I definitely will have a chat this semester. And thanks again for your support. Now, would anyone else have any comments at all? About opportunities or just general comments on the technology or projects? I know we've had a couple of one academic. She's
Simone, you're on mute, I think.
Yeah. I didn't want to dob you in, Simone, but I was hoping you might comment.
But can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm on a new computer and I'm still in the process of getting it set up. So things aren't quite right yet. I'd just like to say thank you very much for all of this. I think this is great. I've just come back from using the Matterport scanner at our farmhouse that's been hit by floods and is going to have to be demolished, but we've found out is over 100 years old and has an extensive history that we're trying to capture. And I didn't know about this except for a chance conversation with Katie. So I'm so pleased that I managed to chat to Katie and that happened. That was just very serendipitous. So I guess it is more a bit about just getting this out here, because particularly in our school, I think maybe it's something that needs to be, I don't know, done through our newsletter or updates or something like that, because I just didn't know about it. And I think it's fantastic. I'm really excited about the capacity that the Matterport scanner and that Spider scanner has, because I'm actually supervising PhDs in this area. So just really thankful that you've put us in contact, but also I guess it's about getting that knowledge out there to academics, is that leap that needs to happen. So maybe something like something in our newsletter that we have, our weekly updates or something, maybe that could help people get the information out there, and maybe do a showcase to our school or something. That might be an option as well. I don't know what others think, but that's kind of what I would suggest maybe.
No, thanks for that feedback, Simone. I know I go and talk to Helene Bassini's class, the GLAM Creative Industries class. That's sort of like a one-off session. But look, can I introduce to my colleague from the library, Gemma Bowman? So Gemma is oversees student engagement in the library. So I just think I might sort of touch base with Gemma after this meeting too, because that's all really valid ideas. It's like, we've had a few students walk in right at the tail end of their degrees and then saying, why didn't I know about this? So I think that's probably...
We could probably also push it out through our HDR community as well with a workshop or something. If you're interested in doing, we could set up a workshop to let our HDR students know what technologies are out there. That might really help too.
Yeah, most definitely. No, thank you so much. It's good feedback, and it's good that you've used the technology.
It was great. It was fantastic. So thank you.
No problems. Are there any last burning questions or anything anyone would like to say? No, I think we're good. So look, thank you everyone for Zooming in. Like I said, this is recorded, so might share with a few people that have been apologies today and just ask for the recording. But yeah, I just think it's all constructive to be able to share what we're doing. And Zach, thank you so much for all your work in the lab. It's Zach's last week this week. But yeah, great example of how we can extend what we're doing. So have a good day, everybody, and thanks for joining.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Bye.